And so there was a specific attempt by the Biden administration to throw some good news out there to distract people from the whole pipeline issue. What Brian just said makes me wonder whether this is a specific attempt by Whitmer, whatever, to distract people, using this issue to distract people from her Corona performance. So kind of the opposite, dynamic going on there. Do you think there's any possibility of that being true? Let's talk about Governor Gretchen Whitmer, the Michigan Democrat, has found herself in a little hot water a couple of times this week, both really of her own making. So you may have heard the story, we reported on it back, I believe in April, when it came to light that Governor Whitmer violated her own health department's regulations or guidelines. I don't think they were actual regulations. I think they were guidelines when she spent the weekend in Florida with her ailing father. Now, I don't for one second begrudge her the opportunity to spend the weekend in Florida with her ailing father. What I begrudge her is to tell everyone else not to do it and then go do it. Apparently, however, the private plane that she chartered to go down there, because, that's what governors do. They charter private planes. You and I wait in TSA lines and, get patted with the backs of people's hands. But not Governor Whitmer. She chartered a plane which apparently lacked some of the proper authority or proper clearance to act as a chartered plane. So you would think the governor would know better than that, but apparently not. So now the FAA is investigating this flight that Governor Whitmer was on. In the same week, Governor Whitmer, and this is, it's going to be hard for me to say this without laughing. The entire eastern seaboard essentially is experiencing gas supply chain problems. Some states, my own state, I kind of call it my home state, my adopted home state of North Carolina. I lived there for 30 years before I came out here to scenic Arizona.
You came out here for me.
Yeah, because Brian was here, and he's my favorite distributor cap. So, yeah, that's your new title. We'll talk with HR at the end of the show.
Excellent.
So we've got, North Carolina declares a state of emergency. It's not the only state to have done so. There are all kinds of gas supply problems in the eastern seaboard. What a great week for Governor Whitmer to come out, or Whitmer, as some of our folks like to say, and renew calls to shut down the Enbridge pipeline, which pumps over 500,000 barrels of oil under the Great Lakes. And that's her concern with it, that it's aging infrastructure, and she's concerned about a future oil spill, not a current one, a future one that is hypothetical. Now, again, I don't begrudge her the call to address this aging infrastructure. It probably is an issue, or it's going to be an issue at some point.
Yeah.
Isn't yet, but at some point that's inevitable, right? It's not going to last forever. But what bad timing for Governor Whitmer to say, you know what the East Coast has? Too much gas. That's the problem. There's too much gas out there. You may be paying $5 a gallon after waiting in a line for 2 hours for that privilege, but don't worry, Governor Whitmer wants to make it just a little worse for you. You can always just buy an electric car for $60,000. I'm sure that'll be just fine. So clearly Whitmer thinks this pipeline demand is going to help her politically, right? I mean, that's the only reason. She wrote a whole op-ed on the subject. The only reason a career politician, writes an op-ed is because they think they've got political points to score.
No.
But did she? Does this call, on the right, obviously we're going to mock her and scoff at this, at least for, not necessarily for the substance of it, but certainly for the timing of it. But what about with her base? Is this call for ending this pipeline, because she's not, by the way, really calling to repair the infrastructure. She wants it gone. She doesn't like the fact that this oil is being pumped underneath the Great Lakes. Is the timing of this going to hurt her with her base, have no effect, help her? What do you guys think?
This is kind of a cop-out, but I'm going to go ahead and say, I think it will like yes and no as far as whether or not this will help her. I think one of the things in my adulthood that I've noticed with the left is that a lot of these crusades and causes that they champion for, it's basically like flavor of the week. So in the immediate return, I can definitely see Whitmer appealing to some parts of her base, like the very extreme green parts of her base. But I mean, long term, I'm not sure. I mean, like right now, the thing people most remember her for, like whether you're left or right, is just Michigan's gross mishandling of the coronavirus
Right.
and the
Right.
just disastrous policies she enacted. And I'm not sure that in the long run, like if 20 years from now, if we're discussing, Gretchen Whitmer circa 2020, 2021, everyone's going to be talking about that, not this. Everyone's going to be talking about the way she handled things with the coronavirus. So, yeah, sure, she's going to score some free brownie points in the immediate, but long term, I'm not seeing what her plan is.
So that gives rise to an interesting question that I'll pose to you, Brett. Some people have theorized that the CDC removing a lot of its restrictions and easing its guidance here recently was directly related to the pipeline shutdown that was causing such pain particularly on the East Coast or east of the Mississippi. Not only, I should say, not exclusively east of the Mississippi, but particularly that's where we're hearing the most of it. And so there was a specific attempt by the Biden administration to throw some good news out there to distract people from the whole pipeline issue. What Brian just said makes me wonder whether this is a specific attempt by Whitmer, whatever, to distract people, using this issue to distract people from her corona performance. So kind of the opposite dynamic going on there. Do you think there's any possibility of that being true?
I think that's certainly a part of the whole equation. A part of me really thinks that her office and herself, she's corrupted by power. In the coronavirus, her handling of the coronavirus only showed that as a governor, she didn't really give hand to the legislature. She wanted to keep people safe and
which only she could do.
Exactly.
Right.
So
it's her witch powers. That's what she can. She's the Scarlet Witch. I don't know if you knew that.
So building off of that, I think this attempt is kind of like a blowback effect. She's trying to rectify the error she had made earlier on. But in terms of the pipeline, I think it's strategically a very bad idea for her campaign. And in addition to that, it doesn't make a lot of ideological sense coming from the left. This kind of comes after Biden's former cancellation of Keystone.
Right,
exactly.
Right.
So it doesn't make much sense. And also, if I may add, the Canadian PM believes that pipelines are one of the most safe and efficient ways to transport fuel.
Probably because they are. That's probably. I don't agree with him all that much, but in this case, I'm on board.
So with the attempt to end the whole pipeline, it doesn't make too much sense from my point of view, because if she was trying to attract those strategic allies, she would be going out and saying we need to reform this pipeline, or we need to rebuild it or restructure it. Like the point you had made, a very sound idea. Sure. Like if it's 70 years old, I guarantee everybody would be on board with some sort of reform effort.
Right.
But yeah, ideologically, I just don't understand. I do think it's thinking backwards in trying to rectify the mistakes she had made earlier in the administration. And on top of that, I mean, as a governor, if I could say this one thing, her going down to Florida and honestly showing she didn't care about her orders that she had made, and all of the citizens of Michigan that had to abide those orders.
Right.
Exactly. It just totally goes against everything that I think people on the right and a lot of sound-minded people just throughout the political spectrum view that these leaders are now seduced by the temptations of power.
Right.
And they don't care if they get caught in a directly hypocritical moment. They just don't care.
Right. It's bad optics. That's the only thing they care about.
And like you had said early on, it's just the flavor of the week. All I have to do is get through this week, and next thing you know, I'm fine.
I'll have a different controversy to cover up.
Yeah.